The great hall of the Xyranth Palace was a place of beauty and danger. Columns of crystal rose high into the ceiling, glowing with soft blue light. Alien banners hung from the walls, each telling stories of wars and victories from thousands of years ago. The air smelled faintly of strange flowers and burning incense, and at the far end, sitting on a throne carved from a single black diamond, was Princess Arya. Her silver hair shimmered under the light, her emerald green eyes cold and unreadable. Every noble and soldier in the room was staring at one man, the only human there. Commander James Carter stood at the entrance, his boots clicking on the smooth marble floor as he walked forward. He had been sent here as an ambassador, but even he knew this was no ordinary meeting. The Xyranth Empire did not trust humans, and humans did not trust them. Every step James took felt like walking through a storm of silent judgment. Alien guards lined the hall, their spears humming with dangerous energy. Ready to strike at the smallest mistake, he finally stopped a few steps from the throne. Every protocol manual in the human fleet said to bow, use the formal greeting, and speak with extreme respect, but James wasn't much for manuals. Instead, he gave the princess a small smile and said, "Hey, sweetie," in the same casual tone he might use in a human cafe. The sound echoed in the silent hall. Every alien noble's jaw dropped. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons. One of them even took a step forward, his eyes blazing with anger. But then, something no one expected happened. Princess Arya froze for a moment, then a soft blush appeared on her pale cheeks, her lips curved into the faintest smile, and she replied, in perfect human language, "Yes, darling." The words hung in the air like lightning before a storm. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. A noblewoman in the front row gasped loudly. An older alien diplomat whispered something to the guard beside him, his face dark with fury. James could feel the tension in the room growing like a living thing. He had no idea if what just happened was good or bad. All he knew was that every eye in the palace was on him now. The princess tilted her head slightly, studying him like he was some rare creature. "Approach," she said in her native tongue, her voice calm but carrying an edge of command. James stepped forward, feeling the crystal floor almost vibrate beneath his feet. When he was close enough, Arya leaned forward just slightly. "What does it mean?" she asked quietly. "What does, sweetie, mean in your language?" James gave her a small grin. "It's a friendly word," he said, "a way of showing affection, like saying someone is special to you." Arya's eyes sparkled for a brief moment, then she leaned back in her throne, as if nothing unusual had happened. But James noticed something. Her fingers tapped lightly against the armrest, almost like she was pleased. The alien nobles did not share her mood. One of them, a tall figure with golden skin and 4 eyes, stepped forward. "This human insulted our ruler," he said sharply. "Such disrespect cannot be tolerated." His voice was full of venom, and James could see several guards nodding in agreement. Arya lifted her hand, and the room fell silent. "There was no insult," she said firmly. "Commander Carter speaks in his own way, and I find it refreshing." The nobles shifted uncomfortably, but no one dared to challenge her openly. James stood still, keeping his expression calm, even though inside, he knew this moment would have consequences. As the meeting went on, James noticed something strange. Every time he spoke, Arya listened more closely than before. She even asked him a few questions about human customs, her voice carrying a hint of curiosity. Some nobles frowned at this, clearly unhappy, but the princess seemed to enjoy breaking their expectations. When the audience ended, James bowed slightly and turned to leave, but as he walked past the massive crystal doors, he caught sight of an alien diplomat whispering urgently to a guard. The guard's eyes followed James with open hostility. Something told him this was only the beginning of trouble. Outside, the palace garden stretched in every direction, filled with glowing plants and strange, bird-like creatures. James took a deep breath, the alien air cool against his skin. He thought about the blush on the princess's face. He didn't know what game he had just started, but it felt dangerous, and somehow, he knew he wasn't going to walk away from it. In the distance, high above the city, he could see the faint shimmer of the palace's protective shield. It gave the illusion of safety, but James knew better. Somewhere inside these walls, people were already plotting, and the fact that the princess had smiled at him and called him darling had just made him a target. The palace at night was not silent. It breathed. Hidden doors shifted open in the dark, footsteps echoed in places no guard ever patrolled, and whispers slid like smoke through the hallways. Every word was about one thing, the human who dared to call the princess sweetie. Some spoke his name with anger, some with curiosity, but all agreed on one thing: he was dangerous. James Carter stood on the balcony of his assigned chamber, staring out at the alien city. From here, the towers looked like frozen waves of crystal, each one glowing faintly in the mist. It was beautiful, but James had lived long enough to know that beauty could hide sharp blades. Behind him, the door to his chamber slid open with a faint hiss. He turned quickly, his hand brushing the small hidden pistol at his side. Princess Arya stepped in, her silver hair reflecting the moonlight from the balcony. She wore no crown tonight, only a soft robe of midnight blue that shimmered like starlight. "Commander," she said quietly, "I need to speak with you where no one else can hear." Her tone wasn't flirtatious now, it was sharp, urgent. James followed her through a side passage that seemed carved into the palace itself. The walls here were older, rougher, as if untouched for centuries. They emerged into the royal garden, hidden behind layers of security fields. The flowers here glowed softly in shades of gold and violet, filling the air with a sweet, almost intoxicating scent. Arya turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Why did you call me that?" she asked. "That word, sweetie." James smiled faintly. "Like I said before, it's a human word for someone you care about." Arya studied him for a long time. Then she did something strange. She laughed, a soft, genuine sound that made James wonder how long it had been since she last laughed at all. But the sound faded quickly, replaced by a shadow in her eyes. "There are those in the palace who will use this against you," she said. "They think you seek to claim me." James tilted his head. "And do you think that?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked along the garden path, her voice low. "I think you don't understand the danger here," she said. "My people are proud and ruthless. If they think their traditions are being challenged." She stopped beside a pool of still water, looking at her reflection. "And some want me gone." James frowned. "Gone? You mean?" "Yes," she said flatly, "removed. By any means." Before James could respond, a faint rustle came from the shadows. He turned sharply, scanning the darkness, but saw nothing. Still, the feeling of being watched didn't leave him. Arya stepped closer to him, her voice even quieter now. "Two council members met with a shadow broker yesterday," she whispered. "They paid for something, or someone." James's instincts sharpened instantly. "An assassin," he said. Arya gave the smallest nod, her eyes flicking toward the far side of the garden. The movement was almost too subtle to notice. A sudden low hum filled the air, and James felt the hairs on his neck stand up. Somewhere above, the palace shield was tightening. "Locked down," Arya murmured. "Why?" James asked. Her answer was simple, and it made his blood run cold. "Because someone just tried to enter my chambers." James looked at her sharply. "Was it meant for you, or me?" The princess didn't smile this time. "Here," she said, pressing something into his palm. It was a small pendant, the same deep silver as her hair, engraved with alien markings. "Wear it always, if you want to see another sunrise." They returned to the palace, but the feeling of eyes following them never left. Somewhere in the shadows, someone was moving pieces on a board James didn't fully understand yet, but one thing was certain. This wasn't just about a casual word anymore. This was about power, control, and survival. And James had just been thrown into the center of it. The grand banquet hall of the Zyrinth Palace was alive with music and light. Crystal chandeliers hovered above the tables, each one glowing with tiny floating flames that never burned out. Rows of alien nobles sat in perfect formation, their clothes glittering with gems mined from dying stars. But behind the beauty, James could feel it, the tension. It hung in the air like a blade, ready to fall. He was seated near the center of the room, close enough to see Princess Arya at the head table. She looked every part the royal, silver hair braided with threads of starlight, emerald eyes scanning the room, her expression calm. But James knew better. She wasn't calm, she was watching, calculating, and waiting. And then, without warning, she stood. The music stopped. Every alien turned toward her. In her hands was a small, black box, carved from some shimmering stone that seemed to drink the light around it. Arya's voice rang clear through the hall. "There is on among us tonight who has shown courage, defiance, and unusual charm," she said, her eyes locking with James's. The nobles began to murmur, James felt his chest tighten. He already knew she was talking about him. She stepped down from the dais, her gown trailing behind her like liquid silver. The hall was silent except for the sound of her footsteps. When she reached him, she opened the box and revealed a pendant, the same one she had given him secretly the night before, but now in full public view. It shimmered with a faint blue glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. Gasps rippled through the room. James could tell by the look on their faces that this wasn't just jewelry, this meant something. Something big. She held it up for all to see. This, she declared, is the bond mark of the Zyran throne. The words hit the room like a shockwave. Every noble knew the meaning. The bond mark was only ever given to one person in a ruler's lifetime. It was a public claim, a sign of chosen loyalty, or chosen love, and now, she was giving it to a human. One nobleman shot to his feet, his voice sharp with outrage. "This is madness," he shouted. "You bind our throne to an outsider to pray." His insult made several guards tense, their weapons flickering to life, but Arya's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Sit down," she said, without raising her tone. The noble sat, not because he wanted to, but because every guard in the room had turned their weapons toward him. James took the pendant in his hands, feeling the faint warmth of its core. He glanced at Arya, trying to read her. Was this protection, or was she pulling him deeper into the game? Before he could ask, she leaned closer. Her words meant only for him. "They won't attack you openly now, but they will hate you more than ever." The feast continued, but the mood had shifted. Some nobles avoided looking at him. Others stared at him with open hostility. A few even left early, their faces tight with fury. James ate slowly, his senses sharp. The moment he let his guard down here could be his last. Halfway through the night, he noticed something. A servant, too tall, too silent, was moving between the tables. The way they carried themselves didn't match the others, and when they passed by James, he caught a glimpse of something hidden beneath their sleeve. A flash of metal. He didn't move, didn't react, but his hand rested near the dagger at his side under the table. The servant vanished into the crowd. When James looked back toward Arya, she was already watching him, her eyes telling him she'd seen it too. She raised her glass in a small, deliberate motion. It wasn't a toast, it was a signal, and James understood the message instantly. The enemy is here, in this room, and they will make their move soon. The music began again, louder this time, covering the soft shift of feet and the faint hum of hidden weapons. The night was far from over, and James knew one thing for certain: this pendant wasn't just a gift, it was a target painted on his chest. The feast was nearly over when the first scream cut through the music. It wasn't loud, it was sharp, short, and ended too quickly. James's eyes snapped to the far side of the banquet hall. A servant lay crumpled on the floor, unmoving, but no one rushed to help. They were frozen, because standing over the body was a figure in black armor, its face hidden by a silver mask. The assassin moved like liquid shadow, slipping between tables. Guards shouted and raised their weapons, but before they could fire, two more masked figures dropped from the crystal chandeliers. The hall erupted into chaos. Dishes shattered, nobles scrambled, the air filled with the metallic scent of alien blood. James was already moving. He kicked the heavy banquet chair backward, grabbed the dagger from his belt, and vaulted over the table toward Princess Arya. "Behind me," he barked. But Arya was already drawing a slender, curved blade from beneath her gown. Her eyes blazed with cold fire. "This is my palace," she said, "and they will bleed for touching it." The assassins charged. James caught the first one with a strike to the wrist, the dagger clattering to the floor. The second swung a long, hooked blade at Arya, but the princess moved like lightning, her sword slicing through the assassin's weapon in a single motion. The crowd gasped, but no one dared get close. One of the attackers hissed in their native tongue, "Kill the human first, the rest will fall." That was all James needed to know. This wasn't just about Arya anymore. They wanted him gone, dead, now. As another assassin lunged, the pendant around James's neck pulsed with sudden heat. A faint blue light spread from it, wrapping around him like a thin shield. The incoming blade struck the glow and shattered. The assassin stumbled back in shock, and James didn't waste the moment. His dagger found the gap in their armor, and the figure collapsed. Across the hall, Arya had backed one of her attackers into a corner. With a swift spin, she disarmed him, pressing the edge of her blade to his throat. "Who sent you?" she demanded. But before the assassin could answer, a small device on his wrist blinked red. James recognized it instantly. "Arya, Down, he shouted. The device exploded in a flash of white heat, the force knocking over tables and sending shards of crystal through the air. The blast would have killed her, but the pendant's glow expanded in an instant, covering them both. The shield absorbed the worst of the explosion, leaving only smoke and stunned silence. When James pulled himself to his feet, the remaining assassins were gone, vanished into the chaos, leaving only the dead and the wounded behind. The guards rushed in too late, their faces pale. Arya stood beside Jam. Yes, breathing hard but unshaken, her gaze swept over the destruction, and then locked on him. They will try again, she said, and next time, they won't miss. James looked down at the glowing pendant. It was warm against his skin, like it had a heartbeat of its own. He had no idea what it really was, but now he knew it wasn't just decoration. It had saved their lives, and somewhere out there, whoever ordered this attack was already planning the next move. As the guards began clearing the hall, a low, ominous hum filled the air. James turned toward the sound. Beyond the palace shield, in the dark skies above the city, a shape moved, sleek, black, and silent. A ship, too small for trade, too fast for a patrol, and it was watching. The palace healers had barely finished tending to the wounded when Arya pulled James aside. Her voice was low, urgent. They will not stop until you are gone, she said, and the only reason you still stand is hanging around your neck. She led him through corridors he hadn't seen before. The air grew cooler, the light dimmer, the walls shifting from polished crystal to rough ancient stone. They descended a spiral stair so old that dust rose with each step. James could hear faint humming, not from machines, but from the walls themselves, as if the stone remembered something. At the bottom, they entered a vast underground hall. Massive shelves stretched into the shadows, stacked with scrolls, relics, and weapons wrapped in faded cloth. The air smelled of age and secrets. This is the vault of the first emperors, Arya said. No one comes here without the ruler's blood, or the pendant's blessing. She walked to a pedestal at the center of the hall and gestured for him to place the pendant on it. The moment he did, the air shifted. Light flared from the markings on its surface, sending glowing threads racing across the floor and up the walls. Ancient carvings came alive, moving like water, and James saw a story play out. A warrior unlike any other, not Zyranth, not alien at all, but human. The eye mages showed this human standing beside a Zyranth queen, fighting back an army so vast it blotted out the stars. The pendant glowed bright in the warrior's hands, turning enemy weapons to dust. Arya's voice was almost reverent. This was not just a gift, it is a legacy, she said. My ancestors fought beside one of your kind before, and swore that if the bond mark ever chose another human, that person would be the throne's protector. James stared at her. So you're telling me I was chosen? Arya met his gaze. No. I'm telling you the pendant doesn't choose wrong. Before James could respond, the walls trembled, dust fell from the ceiling, and a deep rumble rolled through the vault. Arya's eyes widened. They found us, she said. We have to move. The rumble grew louder, sharper. James heard something metallic tearing through the stone above, and then a section of the ceiling exploded inward, showering them with debris. Through the smoke, black-armored figures dropped into the vault, weapons drawn. But this time, James noticed something different. They didn't rush to attack. They were here for the pendant. One of them, taller than the rest, pointed at James. Take it from the human. Leave the princess alive. James pulled the pendant back over his neck, feeling the heat return. Arya drew her blade, stepping in front of him. You'll have to carve it from his corpse, she said coldly. The assassins moved as one. The vault, once silent for centuries, roared to life with the sound of steel, plasma, and fire. The ancient carvings on the walls seemed to pulse, almost watching. James realized that whatever this pendant was, it wasn't done with him yet, not by a long shot. The attack in the vault had left the palace shaken, but instead of offering protection, the High Council demanded a trial. James was marched through the streets under heavy guard, alien eyes watching. From every shadow, some glared with open hatred, others whispered as if speaking his name might bring danger to them. Above, banners of the Zyranth Empire fluttered in the cold wind, but James felt no welcome here. The council chamber was a vast circular hall, thrones of alien crystal curved around him, each holding a council member dressed in ceremonial armor. Their faces were hidden behind masks. No emotion, no mercy. Arya entered through a different door, her silver gown flowing like moonlight, but James noticed the tightness in her jaw. She wasn't here as his ally, she was here as the ruler on trial with him. The eldest counselor's voice echoed, "Commander James Carter of Earth, you are accused of manipulating our ruler, threatening the stability of the throne, and bringing danger into our home." The word struck like a hammer. The crowd that had gathered in the balcony above hissed and muttered. James kept his eyes steady, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing fear. A counselor leaned forward, his mask catching the light. "You brought ancient powers into your possession, powers meant only for Zyranth blood." James shook his head. "I didn't take anything. It was given to me by the princess herself." The room erupted in shouts, but the eldest counselor raised a hand. "Then perhaps the princess must explain why she broke a law older than the empire itself." Arya stepped forward, her voice was clear, but there was steel beneath it. "I gave it to him because the pendant chose him," she said. "This is no theft, no trick. It is fate." Her words silenced the hall for a moment, but then a sharp laugh came from one of the masked counselors. "Fate? Or manipulation?" The counselor slammed a staff into the ground. "I demand the trial of worth," he declared. Gasps filled the chamber. James turned slightly toward Arya, who spoke in a low voice only he could hear. "They want you to fight their champion." The eldest counselor nodded slowly. "If the human wins, he lives, and the bond stands. If he loses, he dies, and the throne remains pure." The crowd roared, the sound shaking the chamber walls. James knew this wasn't about justice, it was about giving the people a public execution dressed up as tradition. Arya met his eyes, her own flashing with both anger and worry. "You don't have to accept," she whispered, but James smiled faintly. "I think I do," because he knew, if he refused, they'd kill him anyway. At least this way, he had a chance. A massive door at the far side of the chamber opened. The alien champion stepped out, towering, armored in black and gold, carrying a weapon that looked like a cross between a sword and a lightning storm. Every step the champion took made the floor tremble. James could hear the crowd chanting his opponent's name, their voices rising like a war drum. The eldest counselor's voice boomed, "The duel will take place at first light." James felt the pendant around his neck grow warmer, as if it understood what was coming. Arya leaned close one last time. "Listen to me, the champion has never been defeated, but there is always a first time." As the guards led him away, James glanced back at the princess. Her lips moved silently, and though the noise of the crowd drowned everything, he knew what she had said. "Don't you dare die." The arena was carved into the heart of a mountain. Its walls rose so high they disappeared into the mist above. Tens of thousands of Zyranth citizens filled the stands, their voices merging into a single deafening roar. In the center stood James Carter, the human they expected to die before the first strike. Above him, banners of black and gold swayed, marking the champion's long record of victory. The ground beneath James's boots was scarred from decades of battles. Some stains on the stone had never been cleaned, reminders that not all left this place alive. The gates on the far side groaned open. The champion stepped forward, towering and broad, his armor a seamless shell of metal that glowed faintly with inner fire. In his hands, the weapon hummed, a blade of solid light wrapped in a storm of crackling energy. The crowd chanted the champion's name in a rhythm that felt like thunder. James felt the heat from the pendant against his chest. Arya's words echoed in his head. "The champion has never been defeated, but there is always a first time." The gong sounded. The champion moved instantly, faster than anything that big should be able to. The first swing came with enough force to shatter stone. James rolled aside, feeling the heat of the blade singe the air where his head had been. He didn't counter, not yet. He needed to understand his opponent's rhythm. The champion came again, each strike faster, harder. James blocked with his dagger, but each clash sent a shock through his arms. The crowd laughed, certain the human wouldn't last a minute, but James saw it now. A tiny lag in the champion's stance after each overhead strike, small, but real. The next time the champion's blade came down, James stepped inside the arc. Instead of retreating, his dagger scraped along the armor seam near the shoulder. Sparks flew. The champion snarled, staggering back. The crowd's cheers faltered for the first time. The champion roared and unleashed a furious barrage, blades of light and fire cutting through the air in blinding patterns. One caught James across the ribs, the pain exploding through him. He staggered, the world blurring, and then the pendant flared. A wave of blue energy surged out, not just shielding him, but pushing back the champion. The crowd gasped. The energy didn't fade. It wrapped around James like armor. he felt lighter, faster, and the pendant's heartbeat pulsed in sync with his own. The champion charged one last time. James met him head-on, sliding under the swing and driving his dagger into the exposed gap in the armor's chest plate. The champion froze, the light in his blade flickering out. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, the armor cracked apart, and the giant fell. Silence filled the arena. Then Arya stood, her voice carrying over the stunned crowd. "The human wins," she declared. No one moved to argue. James pulled the dagger free and looked up at her. She was smiling, not the amused smile from their first meeting, but something warmer, stronger. As he walked toward her, the crowd parted without a word. When he reached the royal platform, she stepped down to meet him. "You kept your promise," she said softly. James grinned. "You kept yours too, sweetie." For the second time in front of her people, Princess Arya blushed. "Yes, darling," she replied, and this time, there was no one in the galaxy who could challenge it.